One of the most well-known running shoes is the Nike Vaporfly and the Nike Vaporfly Next%. While the Vaporfly Next% was a huge change from the Vaporfly 4%, the Vaporfly Next% 2 is just an upper change. However, it feels like a lot more has changed besides just the upper. With over 100 kilometers on the shoe, I'm ready to give you my full review. So throughout this review, I'll be using my Stoplight rating system. So if I give it a green light, that means there's more pros than there are cons. If I give it a yellow light, there's equal pluses and minuses. And if I give it a red light, then the negatives outweigh the positives. In the end, we're going to round up all the results. I'm going to give the shoe a go, a slow, or a no. This shoe was purchased by me with my own money, so like all my reviews, there is no bias in it at all. So let's go ahead, dive in, and start with the upper. Initially, when I first got the Next% 2, I bought it in my usual size 12. After my first run, my toes were slamming against the front of the shoe and giving me blisters. I went up half the size, and the fit was much better. It's still a little more snug in the midfoot and the toe box since it is a racer, but the length was long enough and there was enough room for my toes to splay and swell during long hot runs. The asymmetrical lacing and U-shaped heel padding provided great lockdown in the heel and midfoot. I didn't have to crank the laces or have a bunch of extra upper material hanging around. My foot was secure even on tight turns when I was going fast. So instead of the Vaporweave upper like the first Next%, the Next% 2 gets an engineered mesh. It's very lightweight and it isn't stretchy like Flyknit, but I feel like it has more give than the Vaporweave did. The tongue has some slight padding on the top where you tie the laces, and this is a welcome addition and provides some buffer from your ankle and the laces. Overall, I thought the upper was super comfortable for a marathon racer. So Vaporweave was good at keeping water out, but it wasn't the most breathable upper material. The mesh that the Next% 2 uses is very open and very airy. If you aren't racing on a cold, wet day, this upper is the choice to go for since your feet will be able to feel the breeze. Alright, now let's talk about the midsole. The midsole of the Vaporfly Next% 2 is the same as the one found on the previous Next%. It's a thick slab of ZoomX, which Nike has listed as 40mm in the heel, 32 in the forefoot with an 8mm heel-to-toe drop. This provides a lot of cushion underfoot and helps protect your legs on those longer races. Sandwiched in the ZoomX is a carbon fiber plate. The stiff plate and the soft bouncy ZoomX foam pair very well together to provide a responsive yet energetic ride. It's firm enough that you don't feel like you're wasting energy, but soft enough so you don't feel like you're running on a brick. The plate provides a nice pop that you really notice when you're picking up the pace. Not only does the super foam and carbon plate contribute to a great ride, but the rocker geometry does as well. Under the forefoot there's an aggressive rocker that really throws you on your toes and aids you in a quicker turnover. This leads to a nice smooth ride. However, I will say if you're going slower paces or are a heel striker, the ride isn't as smooth. The heel is very skinny and can be unstable if you tend to land further back. So although this midsole feels like magic, even after a few runs it doesn't look like magic. The exposed foam on the bottom of the shoe shreds easily and the side of the shoe starts to crease a lot. It'll hold off fine for a handful marathon training cycles, for key workouts and races, but this shoe definitely isn't a workhorse. My old pair has 100 miles on them, and while they still feel decent, they're starting to fall apart. Alright, now let's talk about the outsole. The forefoot has full rubber coverage, and there are a couple of strips of rubber in the heel. The rubber in the heel seems a bit more durable, but the forefoot rubber isn't great. Some of my high wear areas are shredded down pretty heavily, and you can easily wear away the rubber and get to the midsole. For a road racing shoe, the rubber does do a good job at gripping. However, it isn't anything crazy. If you need a super grippy Vaporfly, I suggest trying to get a Nike by You version with the waffle outsole. For all this cushion and decent forefoot coverage, this shoe is quite light. It comes in at 6.9 ounces and a men's size 9, which is pretty insane in my opinion, and when it's on foot, it definitely doesn't feel heavy either. Alright, now it's time for the run type stoplight portion of the review, where I go over speed day, everyday, long run day, and recovery day. Starting with speed day, the Vaporfly Next% 2 gets a green light. So the Vaporfly is a marathon racer, so of course it's designed to go fast and will do great on speed day. I've used this shoe for track workouts, fartleks, intervals, tempo runs, you name it, and it's felt great no matter what, whether as going 5K pace or marathon pace. However, for racing, I personally think that the sweet spot is between 10K and half marathon, just because I think there's a little bit too much underfoot for the 5K, but I think that the skinny midfoot and heel is not enough for marathon. For everyday running, the Next% 2 gets a red light. So like I mentioned earlier, unless you're super efficient or you just run on your toes, this shoe isn't the best for your just everyday cruising a long pace because it's a little bit unstable in the heel and the midfoot. Plus, I expect my everyday trainers to be pretty good workhorses where they can handle a beating and have great durability, which the Vaporfly does not. For long run day, I'm giving the Next% 2 a yellow light. So for your normal endurance building long runs, this would not be a shoe for me, considering towards the end of my long runs, my form starts breaking down, I start landing pretty far back, and like I mentioned many times before, it's a bit unstable back there in the soft and skinny heel. However, if you are training for a marathon, this shoe is good for long runs when you're trying to simulate a race and kind of pick it up in that way, but for your long slow days, definitely not my first choice. For recovery day, the Next% 2 gets a red light. So I think by now this is kind of obvious, but this shoe is built for speed, not for taking it easy. Yes, it does have a thick midsole with that soft ZoomX foam, however that plate and that aggressive rocker really throw you on your toes, so when you're trying to take it easy for your recovery days, it's hard to really take it slow since the shoe makes you want to go fast. I'd recommend something like the ZoomX Invincible for recovery days, where you still have that thick ZoomX cushioning, but a lot more stable and built to go easy. So the Vaporfly does look a lot different from when we started a few years ago with the first Vaporfly 4%. However, it still carries a lot of that DNA from the Vaporfly Elite. And while it isn't a huge change from the first Vaporfly Next%, I think this upper really does improve the shoe overall and makes it a much better option for most people by just really improving the fit and the comfort. It keeps that same soft, bouncy, yet propulsive and fast-feeling midsole, but unfortunately it's not the most durable shoe, and for a lack of durability, you also pay a high price. Speaking of which, the Vaporfly did start the crazy $250 running shoe trend, and I think it's just not necessarily worth that much, especially since it's not as rare now as when it was first coming out. So you can find this on sale, or maybe even just slightly used. So if you can find it on sale, I definitely recommend it, because I don't think $250 for this shoe is great, especially since there's so much competition from other brands that tend to be a little bit cheaper. Alright, taking a look at the results here, we have a fair amount of green with some yellow mixed in there. Overall, I'm going to give the Vaporfly Next% 2 a go. This means if you're looking for one of the fastest shoes out there, this is a great option. However, like I just mentioned, it does get a go if you find it on sale, because it is pretty expensive otherwise. So what are your thoughts on the upper change in the Vaporfly Next% 2, or your thoughts on the Vaporfly in general? Go ahead and let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my Nike Streak Fly video that I have coming next week. That will be a good one. So thanks for watching, and as always, keep on running.